Welcome back to Debt Free Life. My name is Sarah, and today we are budgeting for July 14th to 27th, which, depending on how you count it, is either the first paycheck in July or the second paycheck in July. I think I posted my last video calling it the first paycheck in July, even though the paycheck came out on June 30th. This is technically the first paycheck in July, but June had 3 paychecks, so it kind of threw things off a little bit. It doesn't really matter for me because I am a bi-weekly budgeter, so I'm not overly concerned about the monthly calendar. I just need to make sure that expenses get covered in the pay period that they pop up. That's how I do my budgeting. If you're new here, I am a debt-free budgeter. I don't know what I'm saying here. Normally I say I'm budgeting for my family of 3, which includes my husband and my 4-year-old daughter. We live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, so everything is Canadian, obviously. So if you don't recognize, some of the terminology, it's just because we're in Canada. And so if you're in other places in the world, it might be different. Also, obviously the Canadian dollar is different than other currencies. And so the value that we get out of our money might look different. We are debt free, me and my husband, other than our house. We cleared our debt last year. We only had about $23,000 in debt, so it was considerably less than some of the stories that I see online, and we did take quite a long time to pay it off. But now that we are debt-free, we want to stay debt-free, and that's why I do the bi-weekly budgeting, and I'm going to have a budget forever. I actually had an interesting conversation with my husband when we finally cleared our debts, and we make decent money, as you're going to see. We have enough to cover our costs and have some left over for doing fun things, which is the position that we want to be in. But my husband complained, why do we still have to do a budget? And in my mind, no matter how much money you make or whether you're debt free or how comfortable you are, you need to do a budget, because if you aren't paying attention to where your money is going, that is when you're going to overspend. And I actually had gotten a little bit slack on doing budgets. And in my last couple of closeout videos where I closed out my budgets, you could see that I have definitely not been keeping my spending in check. If I'm setting a goal of how much money I'm going to spend on variable things, I've been going over it consistently. So we are going to try and address that in this budget video, this budget with me. Let's jump into our income section here. So we get 2 paychecks. So paycheck number 1, I can never remember if I do this with capital letters or small case letters. It doesn't really matter, I guess, but I don't know. Visually, I want it to look like the other ones. So this paycheck is slightly variable, so I always just put the lowest amount. So $1,530 is paycheck number 1. Paycheck number 2 is $1,120. That one doesn't change. And then we are going to have a category I call float, which we're going to calculate that number once we get into the fixed expenses. This is money that's already in my account that I am taking out of my account and using to pay for bills, because in my previous pay period, I saved for the bills that are going to come up in this pay period. So it's like being a month ahead on my bills. And the reason I just put it in here is so that I can do a zero-based budget. So I have to add it in so I can take it out, if that makes sense. You'll see as I do this. I am going to add another line here that just says other. And I'm going to budget $0 for other, but the last couple of paychecks or pay periods, I have had some money that appeared that I wasn't expecting, and I just didn't have anywhere to write it down in my notebook. So I wanted to make sure that I actually had room for that. So we have to figure out the float before we can figure out my entire amount here. So let's go and write in our fixed expenses. So the first fixed expense that I always worry about is childcare, which is already taken care of for this month. So that's 0. Childcare is the only one of my bills that is not in my month ahead. And that's because I got a month ahead a long time ago before my daughter was going to daycare. And so I need to rectify that situation. And maybe in a couple of pay periods from now, I will add in the $200 to the future fixed expenses so that I can just not worry about it and it'll be in the float. But for right now, we're not going to do that. We're just going to leave it as something I have to think about. I also have my tax-free savings account, TFSA, which always gets $25. This is an automatic withdrawal that just comes out of my account on payday. And then that's the same with our registered retirement savings plan, RRSP. there's $100 per paycheck that goes into that. And then for our expenses that are in the float, we have our insurance, which we pay, how much do we pay for insurance? We pay $75 for insurance. Then for our cable, we pay $180. This number is so high. I really want to get that down. It's cable and internet. And every time I try and cancel the cable and just go to an internet package, they like offer all kinds of discounts on the cable, but then obviously like after a year or whatever, the promotion runs out and then I have to call back. So it's time that I call back and try and cancel our cable again so that we just have the internet, and then maybe I could save some money there. But we do kind of like having cable. I don't know, maybe as an old millennial, there's something about having cable that just like, I don't know, it's comforting to know that I am financially stable enough to afford cable. Is that weird? I don't know. I know that when I first moved out of my parents' house and was living on my own for the first time, I didn't have money for cable. And so like when I was finally able to afford cable, it felt like a big deal. It felt like a money milestone. I think we all have hangups though about money, and maybe that's just mine. Savings, I consider this a bill, even though like obviously this money is just going into my sinking funds. $50 per month goes into my sinking funds so that I at least know that no matter what happens, I will have at least a little bit in a sinking funds. When we were building our emergency fund, which we have fully funded, we have a $10,000 emergency fund, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. But that's when I had this kind of more for that reason, was so that I was always guaranteeing that at least, even when we were paying off debt, even when we weren't like making a ton of money, that we were slowly building our emergency fund. That's another thing that we like didn't follow the advice on. We built our emergency fund at the same time that we were paying off our debt, but that's just how we did it. Then we also have our hydro, which is just, it's our electricity and heat. Obviously in the summer, we don't have heat. Our heat here is natural gas, but it's done by the same company as our electricity, which is Manitoba Hydro, which is why it's called hydro. Also, it is hydroelectric power where I live, so that's why it's called that. That one is $277. And then our phones, me and my husband both have phones, and I'm going to budget $150, even though last month it was only like $141 or something like that. I think we might have finally paid off my husband's phone, and so that way we have a slightly lower bill. Sorry, I got interrupted. All of these ones that have the star next to them are ones that are covered by the float. So I'm just going to add those together and see what we get. So 75 plus 180 plus 50 plus 277 plus 150 is going to give us 732 in our float. Okay, so that allows us then to add these numbers together and get our total income, which is going to be $3,382. Now, remember that this 732 is already in my account, so it's income, but it's just income that I saved from our last pay period, and that's how I stay a month ahead on my bills. Now, we're going to add all of these numbers together and see what we get. 25 plus 100 plus 75 plus 180 plus 50 plus 277 plus 150 is going to give us $857. Now, the way that I do my zero-based budget is I take my income and I subtract each category as I go through, so that by the time I get to the bottom, I have zero. So 3,382 minus 857 is going to give me 2,525 moving forward. So then, you know what, normally I write this number. I'm just going to do this so that I can remember. That's how much I had here. Then I subtracted this number and that gave me this. Now for future fix, this is my bills for August, because in the last pay period, I covered my mortgage for August. So in this pay period, I'm going to cover the bills for August. It's a total of $819 is just, I know that number because I've calculated it before for all of my different bills, excluding childcare, this TFSA savings, RSP savings, but all my other bills are in that. So now we take this number, 25, and we take out $819, and that is going to leave us $1,706 for our variable expenses. I like to keep things really simple. I mean, you can have a million different categories for things. ultimately, I know that I have a certain amount of money for variable, and I do break it out into just 4 categories, but I don't always like worry too much about that. So my 4 categories are groceries, miscellaneous, eat out, and fun. And in the past, I had allocated just like $700 for all 4 of these categories. So it was like $400 for groceries, $100 for miscellaneous, $50 for eating out, and then $150 for fun. But I'm actually going to change that this time, just because I know that groceries are getting more expensive, and I've kind of been ignoring the fact that I've been going over budget in the groceries area. And then also, like, we have definitely been eating out more than $50 worth, because that only really buys us like 1 meal per pay period, and we've been more so doing 2 per pay period. So I am going to adjust this. So I'm going to give myself $450 for groceries, so that's $50 more. We're going to keep $100 for miscellaneous. We're going to put $100 in for eat out and $150 for fun. So $450 plus $100 plus $100 plus $150 is going to give us, that didn't work. What did I do? $450 plus, this is $200 plus $150, $800. That's more what I was expecting. So then we want to take this number, 1706 minus 800, and figure out how much do we have left. So that would give us 906 left. Can you hear my cat meowing in the background? Is he upstairs? He's trapped upstairs. Hang on. Apparently it's a day for interruptions. My husband had closed the baby gate and the cat was upstairs, and he really, really wanted to be downstairs. So he was meowing. So I don't know if you could hear that in the background, but it was distracting me. So let's get back to this. So that leaves us $906 for these sinking funds. Now I know, because I have forecasted my budget for the next pay period, which is July 28th to August 10th, that in that pay period, I am not going to have as much money in my sinking funds category. So I am going to try and cover the shortfall for my Disney savings. If you've been following the channel, I am saving for a big Disney trip. I need to save $385 per pay period to hit my savings goal. So obviously I can easily save that this time, but next pay period, I know I'm only going to be able to save $205. So to make up the difference, I need to save $565 for Disney. So that's what we're going to do with our first sinking fund here. Our Disney trip is going to get $565. And then I think what I'm going to do with the remainder, so let's take $565 out of that. We're going to have $341 left over, and I'm going to allocate that to a category I'm calling savings challenges, which is a new way to put money aside in my sinking funds that I've learned about since coming on YouTube, where you play different savings games, and it's just really fun. And then you can obviously put that money towards whichever sinking funds you want. I do have some basic sinking funds categories. So I have just like my clothing and gifts, birthday, Christmas, extra money for Disney, because obviously even though I'm saving $15,000, there's going to be things maybe like souvenirs and stuff that I want to spend above and beyond just the basics. So that's what I'm going to allocate that money for. Christmas is sneaking up on me, and I do not have enough money saved for Christmas, so I definitely need to make that a priority. But if you're interested in seeing me do those savings challenges videos, check them out on my channel. It's a kind of a different thing, I know, for people who are really more interested in the budgeting side of thing. It might not be something that you're used to watching, but check them out and see what you think. And then obviously subscribe if you want to see me, close this budget out, see how I did, see if increasing this amount is going to help me stay within budget. I had also mentioned in my closeout video from the last pay period that I need to kind of implement some no spend days, which I need to sit down with a calendar and figure out a plan for that, because I'm the kind of person that if I just say, oh, well, I'm going to try and do no spend, I'm not going to actually do it unless I put it in my calendar and say, okay, on this day or this week, I am not going to spend any money. So I got to make a plan for that and figure out how I can kind of go about that, because I know that I'm spending more than I need to be. And honestly, my house is full of stuff. This is the thing. Today is Prime Day or whatever it's called on Amazon, and I didn't need to go and buy things, but I did. I bought some things on Prime today that had been on my wish list that, like, honestly, they've been on my wish list for so long. It's like, did I still really need them? I don't know that I needed them, but I wanted them. And so, like, figuring out those needs and wants, and, like, when you are budgeting, it's important to still leave room for the things that you want. But I also want to have an amazing trip to Disney. I also want to have, extra money that I can put towards my future self, and not just like the instant gratification, and not just the consumerism of buying things that make me happy now, but like once they arrive from Amazon, am I still going to be happy about them? Like, is it the act of buying them that has made me happy, or am I actually going to take value out of owning them? And that's the part that I think I need to like examine more. That's it for today. Thank you for hanging out with me. And we'll see you in the next one.